Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and thank you for tuning in to Canal Algérie's Nightly News on April the 18th. Here are the headlines. The Army General Said Chingriha, the PNA Chief of Staff, receives the chair of the NATO Military Committee, now on a visit to our country. The UN Security Council fails to adopt a resolution meant to grant full membership to Palestine due to the US veto. And the struggle between the Makhzad and the human rights activists in Morocco is taking a serious turn, with more demonstrations castigating the inhumane treatment of prisoners. Welcome back. First off, Army General Said Chingriha, Chief of Staff of the People's National Army, received on Thursday at the headquarters of the People's National Army Admiral Rob Bayer, the chair of the NATO Military Committee, now on an official visit to Algeria accompanied with an important military delegation. Melissa Kabash tells us more.
The ceremony kicked off by saluting the national flag as well as a military welcome addressed to the head of the host delegation by formations of different forces of the People's National Army. Present during the ceremony, the force commanders and that of the National Gendarmerie, heads of departments and central directors of the National Defense Ministry and that of the PNA's General Staff.
لقد أكمل التعاون بين الجزائر ومنظمة حلف شمال الأطلسي.
After welcoming the host delegation, Army General underlined that the cooperation between Algeria and the NATO has ended this March 2024, its 24th anniversary, which allowed the establishment of a solid and fruitful partnership, as well as the creation of a consultation and dialogue dynamic, as confirmed by the Admiral's visit.
أما فيما يتعلق بالتعاون العسكري.
Regarding military cooperation, which constitutes the basis of this partnership, a balance sheet of the achieved activities was presented, showing that the military cooperation between Algeria and the NATO has experienced a qualitative growth in terms of dialogue, consultation, and action.
على مستوى الحوار والتشاور أو على مستوى العمل. أود التأكيد أن الجزائر قد دفعت من أجل استقلالها ثمنا باهظا.
Army General also recalled that Algeria paid a heavy price to gain its independence through its struggle from 1830 to 1962, where 5,630,000 Algerians fell martyrs, including 1,500,000 during November 1st, 1954 revolution. Immense sacrifices which presided over the adoption of the non-alignment policy by Algeria. Therefore, Algeria, proud of its past and fully attached to its independence, firmly sticks to its sovereign decision and to the exercise of its full sovereignty across the national territory.
بماضيها والغيورة على استقلالها تحرص شديد الحرص على قرارها السيد وبسط سيادتها كاملة غير منقوصة على كامل إقليمها الوطني.
For his part, Admiral Rob Bauer hailed the pivotal role played by Algeria in the preservation of both security and stability in the region. At the end, the two parties exchanged symbolic gifts before the chair of the Military Committee of the NATO signed the Golden Register of the General Staff of the People's National Army.
In other news, the UN resolution meant to grant Palestine full membership at the United Nations was vetoed by the United States. 2 states abstained and 12 states voted for. Worth mentioning that Algeria played a key role to convince different parties to adopt this approach. Earlier on, the Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf had recalled at the UN the need to repair the historical mistake by granting Palestine full membership, shedding light on the historically legitimate and legal right of the Palestinian people to build their independent and sovereign state. Let's have a listen to him.
This is a historic right which has not been implemented. And the lack of implementation of this right is the cause of the prolongation of this Arab-Israeli conflict. This is the cause of the lack of security and safety in our region, a region which hasn't known peace for over 70 years. This is a historic right that Israeli occupation today stubbornly rejects and torpedoes at its very basis. Gaza, in its resistance, has shown the aims of Israeli occupation fully, whether this be visible or not, in order to liquidate the Palestinian cause. This is why this has been done, and to hinder our national project with regard to this Palestinian cause. Nobody is unaware of the fact that the genocidal war in Gaza and the suffocation upon the West Bank and the settlement and annexation policies upon Palestinian territories, as well as occupied Jerusalem and the campaign of forced displacement upon Palestinian people, are continuing, without forgetting what is known as the Israeli arrangements following the war in Gaza. The escalation imposed by Israeli occupation is continuing on a number of fronts in our region. The aim of this escalation is now clear: to distract the international community's attention away from the Palestinian cause and to try to create new regional conflicts.
Indeed, the efforts of Algeria in this regard are yet another historical move for the Algerian diplomacy, which with such achievements and firm positions, advocating for fair causes and oppressed peoples, notably at the level of the Security Council. A look back on Algeria's efforts in support of Palestine in this report. At last, and after many attempts, the Security Council is to vote on the draft resolution for the adhesion of the Palestinian state as a full member of the United Nations organization. This project, prepared and submitted by Algeria, was supported by the Arab group and commanded by the Palestinians. An initiative that comes in the framework of the great efforts deployed by the Algerian diplomacy to achieve this objective. Algeria has introduced and highlighted its project of the Security Council resolution in blue, recommending the admission of Palestine as a member of the UN organization. This is the last step that precedes the vote of the draft resolution by members of the Security Council. Algeria's unwavering support to the Palestinian cause is displayed in the many steps initiated, notably since our country began its mandate as a non-permanent member at the UN Security Council. The latest example was during the speech of the Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf yesterday evening in New York in a meeting on the UNRWA, where Minister Attaf announced that pursuant to the decision of the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, Algeria decided to allocate an exceptional financial aid of $15 million for this agency. The foreign minister noted that Algeria hails the reluctance of a growing number of members of the international community to suspend their financial contributions to UNRWA, while calling on other concerned countries to follow this fair and balanced position. On the ground, the Zionist occupation forces continue their barbarism, perpetrating a genocide against the Palestinian people for almost 200 days, a pure suffering for the innocent Palestinians. As we've mentioned, the decision has been vetoed a couple minutes ago. In our daily window on the situation in Gaza, the death toll exceeds a shocking number, 34,000 martyrs after 6 months into the genocide. An umpteenth massacre took place this morning where 11 Palestinians passed away, including 5 children and 2 men in a bombing targeting As-Salam neighborhood south of Rafah. In total, 71 Palestinians were killed over the past 24 hours. As for the ones surviving, they are undergoing the worst possible conditions, destruction all around as neighborhoods are leveled to the ground. And 80% of the schools in Gaza were damaged or totally destroyed, according to UN experts, sounding the alarm to no avail. The Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf received the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, with whom he reviewed the latest developments in Palestine and the possibility of reviving the peace process in the Middle East with a view to establish a sovereign and independent Palestinian state. The situation in the Sahel region was evoked as well by the two sides. The foreign minister also met his Brazilian and Jordanian counterparts, namely Mauro Vieira and Ayman Safadi. The discussions centered on the situation in Palestine and the diplomatic efforts of Algeria to back the Palestinian cause. Both ministers displayed their support for Algeria's approach. In other news, the Communication Minister Mohammed Lagab stressed from Iran province the state's efforts to inform the public opinion in an objective and credible way. The same speaker seized the opportunity to provide some clarifications related to the case of journalist Farid Alilet, who remains an Algerian citizen, according to Minister Lagab, despite being hired by an outlet that has not been fair in terms of covering events taking place in Algeria. As for the situation in Morocco, human rights militants in the kingdom are regularly arrested and are enduring a degrading treatment in these prisons. To that end, many sit-ins are organized to denounce these acts, yet the Makhzen regime is turning a deaf eye to no one's surprise. More testimonies and indications in this report. Moroccan free militants advocating for human rights constitute a real threat to the oppressive regime of Al-Makhzen, who considers them a target. Arbitrary arrests are now multiplying, as it is the case for Mustafa Dakar, a fierce advocate for the Palestinian cause and against normalization with a Zionist entity.
My husband was in this shop when men in civil attire came to arrest him. It should be noted that Mustafa started to have problems when he began advocating for the Palestinian cause.
The arbitrary arrests of human rights militants is now a daily occurrence, resulting in a state of panic among Moroccans terrified of being arrested at any moment by the Makhzen forces. As for the prisoners' families, they are continuing the fight tirelessly to denounce the ill treatment endured by their close ones by organizing sittings in order to provoke a reaction from the international opinion and media, a way to exercise pressure on the Makhzen to force it to review the detention conditions and to put an end to the violence acts against the detainees.
Vendor Duist services in the prison of Tazamamert. There is no lights in the cells, not even space to stand. It was unsanitary and with no bed. The food distributed was barely enough to survive. When I was released, I weighed only 29 kilograms. Right now, as I speak, looking back, I don't know how I survived. Many of colleagues unfortunately passed away as a result of these unhuman conditions.
Many NGO reports and testimonies recall the torture perpetrated against these detainees in inhumane and degrading conditions, subject to physical and psychological violence with no access to health care. These abusive acts are unpunished and torture complaints are never taken seriously by this oppressive regime. A forum of solidarity with the Sahrawi people was held in Tindouf province. This year's edition recorded an unprecedented participation, notably from Arab countries, all present to bring support to the brotherly Sahrawi people in its just cause. According to Melissa Kabash in tonight's final report.
The Sahrawi cause keeps gaining leverage across the world thanks to the international community's support and diplomatic success, including the strong participation of both Arab and African countries to the Sahrawi People's Solidarity Forum held in Tindouf. As for the Sahrawi people, it remains strong and continues its fight to snatch its independence. Eritrea has always supported the Sahrawi cause. We are here to reaffirm our solidarity with the Sahrawi people to guarantee its right to self-determination and independence. The Arab peoples can influence and create a solidarity spirit with the Sahrawi people. We support this just cause as everybody should. I back the Sahrawi people in its just fight for independence in face of the Moroccan occupier. All this reminds us of the Zionist occupier in the Palestinian territories. The Sahrawi and Palestinian causes are linked. The two peoples are facing occupation by colonial forces and are both struggling for their independence. The forum was an opportunity to reaffirm Algeria's unwavering position towards the Sahrawi cause. The Sahrawi people is always at the first rank, heroically fighting for years to recover its independence, showcasing a strong will and an unfailing commitment. From these Sahrawi refugee camps, we highlight the role of the civil society to reveal the truth on the Sahrawi people's suffering and inhuman practices perpetrated against it by the occupier. This event is an opportunity to make our fair cause's voice heard. As it is the last colony in Africa, the Sahrawi people claims its inalienable and fundamental right to self-determination, the only just, peaceful solution.
The end. Enjoy your weekend and good night.